Hey guys, I want to talk about the dark night of the soul, and I want to share my experience with you guys. Share a little bit about what I've learned so far in a span of 2 years that I've been going through it and finally coming out of it, and what I learned from the masters and how it's a little bit different experience for everybody. Not Some people don't even know what the dark night of the soul is. They never experience it. Some people might go through it more than once throughout their life. So everybody's a little bit different. So what is the dark night of the soul? I made some notes here just because I want to make sure that I'm in order. It's called a kind of crisis that requires a deep and painful dip that must be experienced before enlightenment. I didn't come up with this, by the way. I've not experienced full enlightenment. I've had two out-of-body experiences, and I've had, which is called astral project, I believe. I've also had, when I started to meditate when I learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza how to get into it, and this is probably in the past 9 months or so, there's been about 3 to 4 different times that I can remember where it was early in the morning, I got into meditation, and I felt very, very like pure love and joy, and a little bit euphoric, but not the kind of euphoria that enlightenment people are experiencing, and they talk about it. They feel very blissful. They have their bad days because they're still in human bodies, but for the most part, people that are experiencing enlightenment are very blissful. They don't have a lot of attachments in life, so they're just happy no matter what. I'm hoping and praying that would happen one day to me, but I'm not there yet. But I know for a fact that I experienced dark night of the soul, and I think that's probably the reason why my old soul or ego is dying and the new one is coming out. So I know 2 people in my life who have experienced dark night of the soul, or who actually went through physical pain. Literally like a lot of pain, and not everybody experienced physical pain. For me, it was in span of 2 years. It was literally like one challenge after another, and heartbreaks and losing people. And then I was also very sick. I was sick with high blood pressure and high sugar and a massive weight gain. And but did I go through like some kind of physical pain at one night, or did I have some dark entity come entering my room? None of that happened. It's different for everybody. And honestly, if you would have asked me 5 years ago or 10 years ago about dark night of the soul, I would have said it's some kind of a hocus pocus and it's made up. Because to me, it was almost like laughable 5 years ago when I heard the terminology. I didn't think it was real. It is real though. It's happening to a lot of people. So let's see. There are thousands of stories, by the way, about dark night of the soul. The one person that I can think of is Nelson Mandela. We all know about Nelson Mandela's story. He was in jail, I believe, 27 plus years under really, really harsh conditions. And he never lost his dream. So when he came out, and he didn't die in prison. So that's a beautiful example of dark night of the soul. But there are many, many examples of it. I know my brother went through it, and I know I went through it, and I'm at the tail end of it, because things are starting to come back. Not 100%, but it's starting to come back. I finally got a job. I have a roof over my head. It's not the best place that I had before, but I do have a place to live, and I'm starting to kind of put my life back together, and I don't have suicidal thoughts, which is the biggest thing. So some people describe the dark night of the soul as it's kind of like nothing is making sense. It's kind of a death, and it's a rebirth. So your old soul is dying, and your egoic sense is dying, and so the new soul is coming out. So you almost feel like you're a new you, even though you're in that physical body, but it feels like you're the new you, a newer you. And you might not have a lot of those egotistical things that you used to go through in your life. You might be a little bit more compassionate, very genuine about your choices that you make in life, like what you put in your body, who you work for. If you, for example, work for like a pharmaceutical company, and let's just say, God forbid, you find out that they test on animals. Even though you're not an animal right person, you might even be consuming meat, but that still doesn't resonate with you, and you're gonna probably want to rethink that and get a job that you don't have to, feel kind of weird about your job and knowing that they're doing something unethical. So these are the things. And for me, what happened was also I was vegetarian for a long time, and I was only doing dairy. I wasn't doing dairy, by the way. Sorry, I was only doing like boiled eggs once in a while, and that was probably the reason why it was stopping me from going vegan fully. Now, going vegan and vegetarian, I don't necessarily go out there and preach it to people, because I definitely believe it's something that you would want to do when you're ready. Okay, and that's why I don't go out there and preach it anymore. When I first started, I would ask friends and family, hey, take a look at this. Now I don't do that anymore, because everybody's body is different. So for me, my body has started to reject certain things. Like I just couldn't stand the smell of cheese, because in the old days I would do some like a wine and cheese platter, and that was something that I used to really, really enjoy. Now it's like I can't stand the smell of dairy for some reason. I'm not sure what that was all about. And I know I haven't gone through a full enlightenment, but I know that I'm a conscious woman. I am very awakened woman, and I'm learning more about, certain things about my body and my subconscious and all of that. So that's the beauty of it. So it's literally not, it shouldn't be a scary thing, honestly. I mean, it's not like some dark entities enter in your room and you're going to be scared of the dark night of the soul. It's nothing like that. It's just a series of challenges, something that you might go through. It might be a really bad divorce, losing a job, losing a loved one, losing a child. You might lose a house, but you will come out of it. I promise you will. I did. All right, so I wrote down some notes here from Eckhart Tolle. We all know he's had a full enlightenment. It's from one of his newsletters, and it's kind of old, but this is what he's talking about. Another important strategy to avoid making the dark night too personal, too focused on yourself. Yes, you feel alone, but it could still have more to do with the suffering of the world than with yourself. This is quite true. Because you will be sensitive to certain things that is going on around you in the world, especially if you're an empath. You have to be very careful. Like, you're going to notice animal rights, fighting for certain things. You may notice like children that are being abused and they're in war situations, and you're going to start noticing certain things that you didn't notice before. Like elder abuse, there's a lot of that going on in retirement homes, and unfortunately a lot of people don't talk about that, which is kind of sad. But be very careful, and if you're going through it, try not to watch the news a lot. Stay away from it, because you might become very sensitive to those issues. All right, so he's talking about the planet itself is suffering. It's going through a dark night constantly. If you live in a place where children are hungry and dying, and wars and domestic violence, you are within the realm of the world's dark night. Quite true. Okay, so here are some signs of the dark night of the soul that I went through, but some of it is research that I've done from other people's and other videos that I'm going to share, but some I personally went through it myself, so I'll talk about this. So the very first one is, obviously you're going to feel kind of confused. You feel like, what's my purpose here? You might go through a lot of like asking yourself questions, or you might go through a purging system, like a purging symptoms type of thing, where you want to like purge things like material possession, remove things, donate, give it away, and kind of leave like the things that you were really attached to. You want to almost like leave it behind and become very mobile, where you can actually travel or do something like that. Now, there's two folds to that. In the Western philosophy, they call that, some people might call it a confusion, where you go through a confusion and you feel like you want to give all your stuff away and live with very little, become almost a minimalist. In the Eastern philosophy, they actually respect that. Some people might look at that as a person as a hero by giving everything and donating it and live with very little. So the East and West, they're both beautiful. I was personally brought up in a little bit of Eastern philosophy and teachings. However, I'm living in the West, so I have to say that I have a combination of both, and they're both beautiful, and they both have pros and cons to it. So I wouldn't say it's a confusion. It's just depend on the person. Everybody's journey is going to be a little bit different. Like I know, for example, a couple of people where they literally had nothing but a backpack, and they decided that they're just gonna travel and be backpacking. I personally couldn't do that. I was thinking about possibly living in a car and have very little and travel because I love traveling. But I'm a girl. I like to have a shower, and I like to have, have a little place where I get a good night's sleep. So I couldn't do it. Would I do it one day? I don't know. I might. There's something that a part of me wants to do is be very, very adventurous and just start traveling and seeing places, doing things. All right. So a purging would be, giving stuff away and that kind of things. You might feel like you need to declutter your house or your home, which I already talked about, but also your social life. You may start to remove certain people around you or distance yourself from them. Also, another thing that happened to me was, like, for example, I used to spend hours on Facebook. I would be on Facebook posting pictures, commenting, all kinds of stuff, liking things. And that's something that almost stopped for me entirely. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those. I mean, I still have my social media accounts, don't get me wrong. I just don't spend a lot of time on social media. And there's certain people where I felt like I needed to get away from them. And it wasn't because they were mean or vicious or anything negative. I just felt like I couldn't resonate with them and we couldn't quite be on the same page. And I always send those people love and light. I always send them prayers, but I have my distance from them. That's all. And I'm sure at some point we're all going to come together. But if you feel like you need to do that for maybe the first year or second year to put your life together after going through the dark night of the soul or awakening, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no judgment in that, by the way. So let's see. The other thing that you might go through it, and this is something that I read online, where some people actually resonate with the Eastern philosophy versus the Western philosophy. And for me, I would say it's a combination of both, because my parents taught me the Eastern philosophy. Their teachings were different, but I grew up in the West. So I would say I have a combination of both, and I enjoy both. I think they're both beautiful. The other thing that you might go through is this happened to me, but I also read it online, where some people go through experiencing their childhood and they think about a lot of the past, and a lot of that is resurfacing, like bubbling up, a lot of childhood memories or teenage years memories and things that happened. All of a sudden it's like coming up, and you're like, flooded with all these memories, and you're like, what do I need to do? The best thing to deal with it is just kind of deal with it, go through it. And then one thing that helped me was meditation and taking long walks. Just go for a walk, go get some sunshine. Even if it's a rainy day, put on some raincoat and get a jacket on or whatever and go outside, because that was helping me, because a lot of the childhood memory was coming back and it was like haunting me, especially something like traumatic happened to me when I was very young. Basically I saw a dog being beaten in front of me. That it took me forever to get over that memory because of my love for animals. And I obviously always think about that dog, but the difference is now, when I think about that dog now, is I actually send him love and light. And I always tell myself, that dog is in heaven. He's in the best place now. He's beautiful. He's resting, right? But when that happened, and I was like 11 years old, at 11, you don't know what that is. And it's incredibly devastating. And it was very, very hard for me to handle something like that, and or to watch. So that was a memory that I had to deal with it. And I literally had to deal with it. It was very hard. I mean, I am talking about crying, meditation, walking, and sitting down quietly and just sending that dog love and light and asking him for forgiveness. And I actually, there was time where I meditated and I apologized to that dog. And of course the dog is not here anymore, but I apologized to that dog on behalf of other human beings, you know, where we do certain things to animals, especially when you're a young person. You'll never forget that. If you're a sensitive person, that's even worse. So that's another thing, that some of the memories might come to surface, and you're gonna have to kind of deal with them. In the Eastern philosophy, they call that the onion layers, where you kind of remove your layers, and then essentially your self, your true self, will come out, which is the middle of the onion, which is the, you know, your source energy. You're gonna layer a lot of those. You're gonna shed them off, and it's gonna be okay. All right, so the other thing, okay, so I already talked about corporate jobs. If you have a corporate job that you feel like you're not comfortable with it, you might rethink, you know, getting a job that you may not make a lot of money, but you're going to be probably a lot happier. All right. The ego, so I already talked about this. Okay, so this has happened to me, and I also read about this. You're aware of your ego, and you become a little bit more conscious. Well, not a little bit, a lot more. I have to say the ego is always going to be there for me personally, but you become aware of it. So, for example, if I'm having a day where I'm judging someone or something, or I might even not watch myself and say something that it's in a kind of has a negative connotation, I know that I'm coming from an egoic place. And so you have to be kind of aware of it. And everybody handles ego a little bit differently. My brother says that he tells his ego, shut up for a minute. And then I was listening to Landria, and Landria was talking about her ego and saying, who's in charge now? And for me personally, what I've done is, like, when I am in an egoic place, and I guess guys can be egotistical, but girls can be egotistical as well. Not testicle. I mean, girls can be an ego as well, just not as much as men do, though. But we can definitely be an ego, absolutely. When I know I am in that place, I just tell myself, Melissa, watch out. So it works differently for different people, but just be aware of it. That's something that it's going to happen. The other thing that you might recognize is, again, suffering. A lot of people become very sensitive to suffering of, like, for example, children in Africa are starving, not having, shoes to wear to go to school, or other parts of the world who are in war zones and they don't have a lot, like water shortage, stuff like that, trash in the ocean, animal rights issues, and children being abused, elderly people are being abused. Again, these are some of the sensitive issues that you might become very aware and started to feel sympathetic towards certain things. Just don't get yourself too much into it. Send love and light. When you feel like you see, like, let's say for example, you watched a video on YouTube that you see animals are being abused, you're going to be devastated. So the best thing to do is, sometimes I would say, close that video, don't watch it, and send loving prayers. Like, just do gratitude prayers and send loving prayers. That's all you can do, and it's going to calm you down, because that's something that I do. I just send love and light, and it's going to help you out. The other thing that's happening to me is I became kind of a minimalist. So I got rid of a lot of things, and I have stuff, but I just don't have a lot of stuff. And I think that's about it. And you'll become more patient and understanding once you're at the end of it. But when you're in the middle of it, it's gonna feel like it's like you don't want to, or you're not coming out of it. So just be patient, though. Like I said, watch what you're putting in your body. Like, you don't want to drink a lot of alcohol, take walks, eat healthy, and ultimately you are going to come out of it. And the other thing that is going to be really beautiful, you will eventually figure out, what is your role in helping and healing people. this is going to happen. This is the truth. Because you're going to probably get like downloads. Pay attention to that. You're going to get messages from the universe. You might find something, you might read something, you might see something on a license plate, you might even get a call or a message from someone, and just kind of pay attention to those messages. Those are the universe sending you messages.